This segment is brought to you by Jig Masters. Step up your game with high-quality performance jigs, spinner baits, buzz baits, and more from jigmasters.com. And always, when in doubt, get the jig out.
Let's go!
This is the Chasing the Tide saltwater segment on the Paddle and Fin Network. I'm your host, Dustin Nichols. So come along for the saltwater shenanigans. All right, what is up, everybody? This is Dustin Nichols, your host with Chasing the Tide, your saltwater connection on the Paddle and Fin Podcast Network. So tonight we have special guests. We got Wyatt Parcel.
Hey.
Did I slay it or Parcel?
No, you got it, man. You got it. Wyatt Parcel, that's it. What's going on?
Yeah. What's going on, man? We got my man here. He is with Salt Strong. So I'm stoked to have you on tonight. So I want you to introduce yourself to everybody and then tell everybody a little bit how you got started in the fishing and what led you into that little plastic boat there.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So, my name is Wyatt. I am a saltwater fishing coach for a company called Salt Strong. For those of you who may not be familiar with what Salt Strong is, basically we just teach people how to fish. We put a lot of free stuff up on YouTube, but we also have a private community where we give a little bit more in-depth tips. We do on-the-water reports, spot dissections, things like that. Ton of really cool content. And I'm one of the coaches that is in charge of covering this new region of Texas that we've moved into. I just came from North Carolina, and I developed that region. It was a great fishery, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But what got me into the plastic boat, man? That's a big question. So I got into fishing, like most folks at a very young age. The only difference is I didn't have somebody really to teach me. So I looked online for a lot of things, and a lot of the folks that were creating content back in the early 2000s when I was learning, they weren't your guys that were in boats. They were the guys that had the GoPros on the kayaks. They were guys that were fishing on shore. So those were the people that I learned from. And I definitely took a lot learning from them. And it really did inspire me to want to give back and teach. When I did learn how to fish, I went through all the trial and error. I put my time in on the water and I learned all that hard stuff that comes with, getting skunked, but also having those good days as well. So I'm very blessed to have this opportunity with Salt Strong, where I get to give back essentially and be that teacher that I was looking for when I was a kid. So I'm so stoked to be here in Texas and covering this new amazing fishery.
It is. And the thing about Texas, especially fishing out of a kayak, there's just so many options. It just opens up so much water. I mean, like I've said it a million times on this podcast, when I first moved here, in Georgia, where I'm originally from, you can't go wade fishing or you'd be up to your neck in mud.
Yeah.
So you came over here and you're like, man, what are these guys doing walking around all out there? I was like, man, you can just walk in and fish areas. And so I would, throw some top waters over some flats on the way to surf in the mornings when I drive down to Corpus to surf. It just was like, man, it just opened up a whole nother door when that kayak got into it. It's just so much more area you can cover. And it's so much shallow areas that just have the flats that are just vast in a lot of these places. And it just helps to have access to it. So it's cool. It's definitely different.
Oh yeah, no, big time. That was probably the biggest shock for me, especially when I first came into Corpus. I was looking at places to live, and I came over the big bridge that is over Corpus Christi Bay, and it's like I could see the bottom, and I had not been used to that over in the coastal Carolinas. The only time you can ever see the shoreline is the first foot off of it. So to see all these shallow areas just blew my mind, and see all the people waiting, like you said, it's just it's a different type of fishery. It's really, really cool.
Yeah. So you mentioned, you're a fishing coach with Salt Strong. So just tell everybody a little bit more about get in depth on Salt Strong. What all does that entail? Is there like a subscription program, or is it, they can get on YouTube and check out some stuff also, but give them a broad answer to all of that, what y'all cover.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically on the public side of things, we do put out a lot of free tips just so that we can get eyeballs for folks to see us and kind of get involved with our content. Obviously, we want to help the folks that may not be able to afford the membership at the time as well. We're all about helping people learn. So every single one of the tips we put out has a lot of value in it, whether it's on the free side of things on YouTube or in the private community that, yes, people do pay a subscription for. You do have the option to pay for it monthly if you just kind of want to try it out, see what it's about, or you can save a bunch of money, go annual, and you get access to a little bit more stuff. Basically, what we have in the community is all these anglers. It's like a Facebook group on steroids, and without all the negativity, because we've removed all of the people and we do it every single day. We just monitor, what's being posted. We make sure that everyone that's in there is being positive and helping. It's a really interesting community of folks. One that I would really compare to my network of guides that I talk to, where we're just constantly discussing tactics. We're sharing what's working on the water, and we're all just kind of posting stuff in there, and we're sharing info. It's really cool to have such close connections with guys that are down in Florida, and I know exactly what's happening in their fishery because I talk with them every day online. I don't get on Facebook. I don't get on any of that stuff. I just get in the community and I talk to all of my fishermen that are in there, and it's such a really, really cool community in there. You're going to say?
That is cool to have that access to that also. Just like I was, I get, we text a lot, all of us guys that are kind of close, and we're actually through Chasing the Tide, we were running a month-long trout tournament, the winter trout kayak showdown. Through Chasing the Tide, and with our weather in Texas, I was like, you know what, I'm going to extend it 7 days. We're just going to add an extra 7 days. And then my boy Brian Nelly called me today and said, man, he said, I don't know if it's ever happened, but I just put 3 over 30 on the board today.
Oh man,
in South Florida. So,
that is insane.
Yeah.
Where's he down fishing at?
He's fishing the South Florida area, somewhere up towards Melbourne, around that area, maybe somewhere around that way. So yeah, he does Pushing Waters kayak guide service out of kind of West Palm area down that way. He does some good offshore stuff too. Yeah, he's a good dude. But yeah, I got that text. I was just like, man, it's about to ruffle some feathers on that leaderboard.
That is awesome. No, yeah, that's a great area to fish. And to kind of expand on that, I know it's a great area to fish because we've got coaches that are down there that are fishing those zones. That's the other cool thing is we have this wide concept of a system when it comes to fishing, and we kind of go through when you join the community, we kind of go through an introductory process, and we kind of give you some training to start out. And what that is an introductory course that's called the Finding Spots Mastery Course, and it basically gives an overview of how to read satellite maps, how to read tide charts, how to read all of the fundamentals and properly pre-plan a trip. There's there's nothing in the Finding Spots Mastery course that is on the water. It is all pre-planned. And that's actually, if you'll notice, and this, folks that may be listening that might just be getting into fishing might not know, the success is usually determined by your pre-trip plan. All the time that you put in before you even get on the water, looking and knowing and planning what the conditions are going to be, what spots you're going to hit up based on all the different variables. That's really where you find your success. So that's something that we try to put every member through so they get the right mindset of understanding the conditions and how it affects the spots you need to be fishing rather than, just a GPS number of a spot.
Right. So the fish are probably not going to be there the next day anyways. And then it's always cool to be able to have that that quick on the point to jump to something else that might not be working, that you planned, because things might not go as planned like always. The weathermen are wrong sometimes, and that the wind might switch on you. Little popcorn thunderstorms pop up here and there in Texas too during the summer and stuff. So yeah, it's just but like you said, pre-planning is a big part of everything, though, for sure. Definitely.
Yeah. So after that, it's, a lot of it's keeping up with what's happening. So that's when we do the on the water reports, the spot dissections based on, what current trends might be. So I'll dissect an area in the Carolinas. It may be a spot I've been to, maybe a spot I haven't been to. Just talk about a lesson essentially, and just make a lesson, not, here's a good spot to fish. It's understanding how fish might be affected on a windy day, on a cold day, after a front, different factors and variables that just kind of give lessons on several different variables that may happen for a trip and what a plan might look like for those variables. So it's just constant, practice and training that we're putting up that really kind of reinforces all of the system basically that we've put together at Salt Strong. And then obviously,
and the platform, is it just through a website or is it an app? It's through a website.
Yeah, so it's a website. We used to have an app that just, it got kind of buggy. So we just converted it all to the website. And you can always just save it on your phone. Like, it looks like an app and it just pulls it right up.
Oh, cool.
But it functions a lot like an app. So it's really, really clean, smooth, mobile. And it's really, really nice and easy to use, especially for someone that might be just, starting to get into fishing and is looking to learn quick.
Cool deal. Sounds like y'all got a good thing going on, man. That's really cool. And then you had an opportunity to move to Texas and experience some of the fishery over here. You just made your way here from North Carolina, and you spent some time in the Wilmington, Carolina Beach area, Wrightsville Beach, and all that. That's some of my old stomping grounds from when I used to surf and used to play in a band. We used to play at the zoo. There's a bar there, and we've had some good times up that way. So tell everybody, if you can, transitioning from that fishery in the Atlantic, how was your time on the water there compared to what you're starting to see here? Tell everybody a little bit about the fishery over there and how it compares for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So North Carolina was kind of my first region to develop. So I did have a lot of learning to do there with the big tide swings, the dirty water, the winding creeks. It's there's a lot to take in, and I'll just kind of preference. It's a little bit more of a difficult fishery to learn as a beginner, I believe, marshes like that, just because we talk about pre-planning with variables. It feels like there's a lot more variables that can really cause some disparities between fishing trips. So there's a lot more that you have to learn and plan for, and it can sometimes be really overwhelming. So in the Atlantic, I really just tried to understand inshore fishing from the pre-planning side of things, understanding tides, just again, because you get 5-foot tide swings over there. It's something that factors really heavily in over there. Here, I find the tides, it is very important, not as much as it was over in the Atlantic. It seems like that's a much, much bigger factor over there. And the wind, just because of the marsh grass and everything there, never really seemed like it was a huge factor. Obviously, it came much further behind on the tide, and even, sometimes further behind on the weather, whether it was a warming trend or a cooling trend. Here, it seems like the wind is a much, much larger factor than over in the Atlantic. So again, it's shallower here. It seems like the wind is what's manipulating currents, manipulating bait, just because in these shallow areas, that's just kind of how the topography of the flats influence fish behavior. Yes. So those are the biggest differences I've seen is just understanding what variables are more important to kind of pay attention to. But in terms of, the fishing itself, transitioning from the Carolinas over to here in Texas, there has been a lot that I've changed in terms of my retrieves, my tackle, just because I'm fishing different types of zones. Yes. Like we said, in the winding marshes, things like that. You've got mud bottoms. I was primarily using jig heads, really heavy jig heads, actually, yes. 1/4 ounce, with the paddle tails, shrimp, things like that. Bouncing along the bottom, and I was picking up a lot of flounder and reds. And if I did want to go after trout, you're cranking those mirror lures around those points, things like that. And here it seems like there's just open space. There's no kind of sharp corners that you're working. There's no really hard depth changes that are at the mouth of a creek. There's really no creeks here, at least in the area that I'm fishing. I've not gotten a chance to travel a little bit further north where there is a little bit more of that type of stuff. But here, it's really a lot of open grass flats and kind of subtle depth changes that I'm seeing, other than the intercoastal channels, obviously. But that's altered the way that I've fished a lot too. The speed that I'm fishing, the tackle, I don't think I used many weedless hooks. Maybe some of those ice strike Texas eyes when I was up in North Carolina, because they get down to the bottom really quick. But I've started using a lot more owner twist locks. These are fantastic. And I like the way that they hang in the column a little bit more, as opposed to those Texas eyes. When I am trying to get to the bottom and I still need to be weedless, I will put on those Texas eyes. But when I'm just going right over the grass, I like the twist locks, just the way that they hang or potholes, things like that. I know we're going to talk about some big trout tips later, and that's a big key is, how long
definitely
is a bait hanging over that kind of stuff. So I guess I've rambled on with this question, but there is a lot that is different, but there's also a lot that translates over. I would say that I've had, when I did figure out the fishery in the Carolinas, I was very successful over there. Coming over here, it was an easy transition because we talk about pre-planning. Regardless of where you live, you're picking the same concept type of spots. They may look different on a satellite map, but the concepts of understanding where feeding zones will be in relation to certain variables, where bait's going to be pushed through, where fish are going to be in relation to certain weather patterns, those concepts all hold true regardless where you live. So it was a pretty seamless transition in that respect, knowing where the fish kind of would be and where their feeding zones would be in relation to those variables.
Especially trout.
Oh, yeah.
They're opportunistic feeders. They're going to be set up ambush points. They're going to use that wind-driven current to their advantage where they set up to have that bait push to them also. They can get a little finicky sometimes and be, stubborn, but most of the time they're usually pretty voracious when they hit your stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Working through them choke points and stuff. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. Cool deal, man. So, we just dealt with that big freeze here. I wanted to kind of touch on that. You're down around the Laguna Madre area. You're living in what part are you in Corpus exactly, or are you in?
I'm on the outskirts. I'm in Aransas Pass.
Aransas Pass. Okay, yeah. So they saw some stuff there. What are you seeing? Have you been on the water since the freeze?
Yeah, so I went out once, and I went out on Sunday. I wanted to give the fish some time to kind of recuperate, get some meals in before I, hooked into them, put them through a fight. So, that was the first kind of day I felt like it would be good. We had a slight warming trend before another front came through, which we're experiencing now.
Yes.
Yeah, we're getting rained on real bad, but yeah, so what I saw, and I did get a chance to go down to South Padre and see some things as well during the freeze, just because we lost power and water here. And I had a guide buddy down there, Captain Nathan Folks with South Texas Fishing Adventures, stayed with him. And from what I saw down there, it seems like the shallower areas in his area were really, really heavily affected, just because they're, the one area that I think the fish were able to duck off into in that Port Isabel, Brownsville area was the shipping channels.
Ship channel, yes.
Yeah. But, all the muck and everything that got kicked up by barges and all kinds of stuff like that, there weren't a whole lot of fish that got out. I know you guys covered this in a previous podcast that I was listening to. And
little bit, yes. It's definitely had more float up the last week as it warmed up and they started decomposing, because a lot of those fish were their swim bladders were released and everything was shriveled up and they were down on the bottom, hunkered down, So, when those ones that kicked a bucket, it's unfortunate, they're all just starting to float up now. And the past, few days, they've seen a lot more stuff, especially East Matagorda got hit pretty hard.
Gosh.
That's a great fishery, and it had been turned on the past 2-3 years. And then that as low as the tides got, when we get that strong northwest wind with those fronts associated, and it just blows the water out. And that bay must probably wasn't deeper than 4.5 foot in most of the areas, and that whole water column got affected with the cold water temps we had. So it's sad to see all those pictures, especially from the land cut areas, Port Mansfield and all that, with all the barge traffic that kicked up all those fish that were trying to find safe refuge in the ICW. It's pretty disheartening.
Yeah. It's super unfortunate. And we didn't do any fishing while I was down there. We just pretty much saved turtles and surveyed. Yeah. I haven't done any fishing in Corpus Christi or the upper Laguna Madre yet. I did that trip that I took this past weekend on Sunday. That was up in Rockport, where it seemed like things weren't as bad as the area that I live in Aransas Pass, some of the upper Laguna Madre. There was a little bit more wind protection in the areas that I was fishing. and they were in close proximity to some deep zones, and that's kind of been a trend that we've been seeing. Is they're still moving out of those deep zones, but they definitely are favoring the wind protected shorelines.
Yes,
which it makes it pretty easy to locate them. I'm finding a lot of numbers. I caught a slam, I got the flounder, got a couple flounder, got a couple reds, and a ton of trout, but I only got one over 20, and it was really kind of sad. And a lot of them had dolphin bites on them. They've been absolutely beat up. Those trout, it seems like they're not in the best of shape. The reds, and this is everything I'm saying. Also, this was down in South Padre as well. Did not see a whole lot of reds that were affected by this thing. Same thing with the black drum. And it could be, I still haven't gotten out too much since it's warmed up. Initially, we saw less than probably 10 reds when we were out and we walked the shorelines for 3 days grabbing turtles. But there were thousands and thousands of trout. It was really bad. But it seems like the reds and the black drum held out pretty well. There was a lot of sheep's head I did see that were dead. One other big thing is I'm having a lot less action on my bait fish presentations, and that might have just been the one. I don't have a big test subject here. Basically, I've only been out once since then, but a lot of my fish came off of shrimp imitations, just because there's not a whole lot of mullet present. I'm not seeing a lot of finfish jumping like I was before the freeze, because I've seen a lot of them dead on the shorelines. So I'm very interested to see how this freeze is going to affect the feeding patterns of fish as well. And I was talking to Captain Caleb McCumber up further north in that area. We were talking about Matagorda. He had a great, he was talking about the freeze affects the fish today in terms of the temperatures, but the bait is what's going to affect our fish tomorrow.
Right.
Just because those are the big high calorie meals that these fish kind of look forward to for the summer when it gets warm. They've got really high metabolisms. Shrimp are plentiful, and I don't know how badly the shrimp were affected during this freeze. I think probably not as bad as bait fish. Again, I could be wrong, but they don't provide the same amount of calories that a big croaker, a big mullet does for those larger fish. So that's kind of my summary of the freeze. There's still so much to be seen with it, in my opinion. I definitely don't think we're out of the woods yet. And it's good to see that there are a lot of fish that are active, and there's definitely still numbers out there. And I know that they're recovering, and with the effort of anglers being conservation minded, I'm not telling everybody to release everything. It's your legal right to do what you need to do. But I personally am going to be releasing everything for the rest of the year. I think if enough people can participate in conservation minded angling, I think we can bounce back from this even stronger than the fishery was beforehand.
Yeah, I'm with you on that also. As far as the initiative, they kicked off pretty quick. I know David Flad from Release Over 20 teamed up with Speckled Truth there, and they got the Release Texas 2021 initiative going. So anything that can help our fishery, I'm all on board for. As I've been a supporter of the Release Over 20 since last year. Once I found about it, it kind of started out over there on the East Coast after one of their freezes. And, David kind of took an initiative himself to kind of, release everything a little bit bigger, make his own, rules that he went by. And then everybody kind of started following along, and everybody's like, yeah, man, I'm going to release mine over 22. And it kind of just came along and made this whole big initiative. It's pretty dang cool. So I'm all for that, man.
Yeah, I love Release Over 20. I've got stickers all over my place. Dave probably is mad I've submitted enough fish and I keep asking for decals, but I love putting them everywhere so people can see.
Good to see you.
I think people need to get
involved. Try to get more people involved because, it's like, man, Virginia had way more fish than we had submitted last year. And I know I submitted a pretty good bit. And it's just like, man, we got to step it up, Texas. Come on. But everybody, they release to grease, hey, them 17-inch fish eat good too. You don't got to always stack up them bigger fish. So, it's just like, it drives me crazy sometimes.
Yeah, that's a big mindset. That's a little bit different. And we talk about differences from Atlantic fisheries over to Texas. We do have, and this is I'm sure you've talked about this with our mutual friend, Judson Brock. We're fighting gill nets over in North Carolina. There's a lot of commercial fishing, and, I've seen the effects of overfishing up there. The trout population, and that's another big difference, is this is such a healthy fishery. To come here and experience what is here in Texas, the numbers of fish, the quality of fish. You can totally see a difference when a fishery is managed well and it's not overfished and abused.
Yes.
Most anglers, recreational anglers in the Carolinas, I don't know, other than a few, most folks do release their fish because we're trying to build that stock back up. As we continue to fight legislation against the nets that are really absolutely destroying the stocks. I mean, here it seems like you guys have managed the fishery so well that it seems like everywhere I go there's trout, which is not the case in the Carolinas. It seems like there's a lot more redfish in the Carolinas than there are trout. It's just a difference in species numbers, I would say, but it's an amazing fishery over here that I am worried about, but I do believe as anglers we'll be able to take care of it.
Be able to pull through. Yes. Yeah. Sure. Just like you said, just being more conservation minded. There's no sense to stock the freezer. Take them home, eat them that evening. You're going to take a few home, feed the family. That's great. You have every right to do so. But, I'm not trying to push it down your throat, but, I'm going to do what I do. You can do what you do. Everybody has their own opinion, but my opinion on this is that you definitely need to step up and let some more go this year for sure.
I agree.
Especially in those hard hit areas, Some areas fared a little better. Seemed like the northern part, Galveston, some stuff up there fared a little better. Sabine and all that. So, just hope that everybody don't rush up there and put all that pressure on y'all's waters. Right? Right? You got to think about that too. The places that didn't get impacted as much, get more pressure, and then that's going to affect it in turn that way too.
I mean, that's exactly what I did. I went to an area that I heard wasn't hit too terribly by the freeze. I went up to Rockport. So that was my first move after this. So that is going to be another big effect that we probably see a lot of anglers fishing new areas as well. So I guess be ready for that, folks that fared well during the freeze.
Could be. Well, seeing that you did go fishing, what we're going to throw out, I usually throw out something called Pick 3. It's where you pick your 3 favorite combos, or what you're going to have on that kayak, what you're going to have tied on your 3 favorite rods when you go out.
Yeah, this is a tough question for me. I know we talked about this. So in terms of what rods and reels I'm using, very, very easy to answer that question. So I'm a very big fan of medium fast action rods. I like my 7s, 7.4, 7.6. I normally don't venture outside of that range. I do have some rods that are 7 foot. I've got my St. Croix Mojo Yak that I like for really precision casting. If I'm sight fishing, it's just a great maneuverability rod. I typically will have my St. Croix Mojo Yak medium fast at 7 foot, and I'll have a really light soft plastic on there. Typically what that's going to be is a small paddle tail. I find that I can use that for sight fishing scenarios, and it's also going to be on my larger rods as well as an alternate on maybe a larger profile paddle tail. But it's just such a versatile lure, and I would say that's my number one lure that I'm going to be using is a paddle tail, just because you can fish it a ton of different ways. You can, slow roll it. You can fish it over the potholes with pause and goes. You can double twitch pause it like it's a shrimp. I've caught fish on paddle tails literally every single season with a pretty consistent rate. I wouldn't say that it slows down throughout the year. I do adjust the size based on the season in the colder months. And that's another thing I'm starting to see here in Texas is it seems like there's different forage as well. And the bait fish don't get as small in the wintertime as they do over on the East Coast. There's a lot of small bait fish and small presentations that we're going to use in the winter. That's, the Ned rigs, gulp shrimps, things like that are really big there in the wintertime. So I tend to use smaller presentations in the winter. Here, I'm actually sticking with what I thought would be, my kind of late spring lures in terms of paddle tail sizing. But sorry, to go back to your question.
Oh, no, you're good.
Pick 3. I'm going to go on tangents here. My bad. In terms of my reels, I'm a huge fan of Daiwa products. we're not sponsored by anybody at Salt Strong or anything like that. So know that when I talk to you guys about all these products I'm about to, this is stuff that I like using because I like using it.
Tried and true.
Absolutely. And those Daiwas, the Mag Seal, just because I'm in the kayak, does a great job of not letting that reel get torn up. I've used a lot of different reels. I get wet all the time, fish splashing, there's slime everywhere. Those reels have consistently held up very, very well. And the two models that I really like are the Ballistic and the Fuego. And I like the 2,500 to 3,000 size class. It's just whatever I can get on sale. I don't have too big of a preference there. Obviously, with my lighter setups, I'm going to put the lighter reels on there. My Mojo Yak is going to have the 2,500. My larger rod's going to have, the 3,000 class reels. And the difference between those two is just the Fuego is one of those ones. It's just like $99. I can put it on anything, and I know it'll be good to rock and roll. Ballistic's a little bit more of a Cadillac. I like that for anything that I know I'm going to be moving fast lures with. So my top waters, which is my second go-to lure. I'll touch on that in a second, but that 6-to-1 retrieve with that Ballistic, I just like the way that it moves baits through the water that I'm trying to give a little bit quicker presentations with. Plus, it's got that tournament. It's a fantastic reel, but it is a lot pricier than the Fuego. So
Yes.
Those are the reels that I have on my rods. And then the other two rods that I'll have, I typically am just going to go with, a very sensitive blank for my kind of the medium presentation. So if I'm going to be using a larger swim bait than that really light tackle setup I talked about earlier, I'm going to be using maybe one of those larger paddle tails, or I'm using a 5-inch jerk shad. I'm going to have a little bit larger of a rod. I like the St. Croix Tournament Legend. I played with that one a lot. Fantastic rod. Very sensitive, just also very stout, even when you hook into larger fish. It's done a lot of great things for me. Unfortunately, it's got a broken guide right now. Those St. Croix, the one thing I will say about them is they don't have the durability of some other brands out there, but they're extremely sensitive. And for me, I'm willing to sacrifice having to maybe get some stuff repaired, replaced, to have that level of sensitivity. But no, it's going to come at a price much more than some other rods. And I do have another custom rod. It's a custom Lamy glass that I had purchased that I just fell in love with. Unfortunately, I don't know the specs to tell anybody listening to it, but that's the other rod that I have, and that's what I'm going to have my seasonal bait on. Again, that's going to change throughout the year. Typically in the colder months, I do transition to the smaller baits or the shrimp presentations like I'm doing right now. And that's what I'm going to have rigged up on that third rod. It's just kind of my wild card. So to kind of recap on everything, top water, which I'd absolutely love to throw out. I'm not doing a ton of it this time of year. But as I talk to you, apparently I should be, just with some of those larger bait fish that appear to be here in Texas. I just love top water. It's such a consistent producer for me. It's such a fun way to fish. And then
you got that visual of it's just blowing up on it too. It's just kind of hard to beat that.
Yeah. So the paddle tail and the seasonal bait, and that covers my tackle. Sorry, I can go down a hole with
another
tackle, man. I so bad. I hope your viewers forgive me for that.
Oh yeah, it's all good, man. Like you said, this time of year, there are times when you do have that afternoon warming trend. Those fish, especially the bigger trout, might want to cruise on up there and try to see what's cruising as the bait fish warm up. Also, they move up to warm up also, and some of those more aggressive bigger fish will move up and get after them too. And I've had good share of luck doing that, moving in the evenings and stuff after a good warming trend, and move up and throw in top water and knee deep water, and caught some pretty solid fish doing that this time of year. It just all depends on what they want. Sometimes they don't want it. They don't want to touch it. Mm-hmm. So it's just hit or miss, but it's always good to have one on there, tied on and ready. So that's the thing about the kayak. A lot of times you got to pick and choose what you're going to have, because we have limited space. We're not like a boat. So, they do make some nice crates to have all your rods staged behind you. And then most of the times I'm going to have 4 or 5 with me. Same thing, plastic, good paddle tail, a good suspended twitch bait like a Corky or Soft Iron XL, top water. And depends on if I'm fishing some kind of structure or something, I could have a chatterbait for fishing along grass lines. It all depends on what I'm doing. And then, if I got some little drains or something like that in some of the back marsh systems, I'll have a popping cork with a shrimp imitation tied on to myself. So this time of the year, not as much, as we move to more towards the spring, we'll start seeing some of them shrimp come back in and everything. So, they'll move to that more of a shrimp laden diet. Right now it's all bait fish, and then some of the longer presentation soft tails, like the little jerk baits and stuff to kind of mimic a sand deal, because we have a lot of sand deals also.
And, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. I've caught them on, Texas rig plastic worms around reef where the sandworms are present. I probably shouldn't say that. I haven't. I've never done that.
Yeah, I've been trying out a lot of Texas tackle recently. I picked up a bait caster, which I'm supposed to get made fun of because I use spinning gear here. I don't know anybody outside of Texas really, other than I think one fishing TV host that I know of. I don't know many folks that use bait casters outside Texas, but I moved down here. And I go into the tackle shop, and I'm talking about maybe getting a spinning reel, and the guys at the counter are laughing at me. So
they use them a lot more down south Padre, Port Isabel, and all the spots. I do have a couple that I use, but a lot of my rods I throw soft plastics on are it's like a 6'9" medium light extra fast and I throw like 15-pound braid with 15-pound fluoro, and I can throw 16th-ounce jig heads on that all day. Mm-hmm. And that rod and reel is only like 8 ounces. It's a custom loose light with a Waterloo HP light, 6'9", and it just all day long, no fatigue. And and it does make a big difference. The same thing with top waters. I don't want to have a big, cork handle. And I'd rather have something I can just work all day and you don't get no wrist fatigue from it. So yeah, I'm all about the medium light rods, and I'll put big redfish to hand on them things. It's just, I like the extra fight, that extra run, and it's good times. And things, you don't deal with that fatigue. I could say that over and over. But yeah, good stuff, man. So what you see in over here? I saw you caught. You had a pretty good one recently, right before the freeze. You had one about 26 3/4, I believe, or somewhere around there.
Yeah, I got a pretty solid one. That was pre-front coming up to this freeze, and it was we had just come off of a smaller front, and that's another big thing that I've just been learning here is the fronts with this shallow water. It affects exactly where these fish are going to. I mean, to the point where it's honestly the fronts make it easier to find fish.
Yes.
When they're changing around, just because you can really know what pattern of behavior they're about to go into. And it really gives you a little bit more of a condensed game plan, which I like. I don't like there being a lot of left to question. It's like, what should these fish be doing? You can apply that just based on weather patterns. But yeah, so I picked that fish off in between fronts, coming off of a cold front, about to get into another one. So it's just really good time for it to be feeding. We were close to a major lunar event, which is, I can't remember if it was a new moon or a full moon, but one of those two.
Yes.
So it was very likely that a fish of that size would have been feeding. It was just a good opportune time for it. And really all it was is, I was talking earlier about these owner twist locks, and this is something I've been seeing a lot of success with. And I actually thought about doing this because I started using the corkies, because I saw the corkies working well. I started throwing them with my bait casters and everything. And it's like, man, this just makes sense. So what I was doing is I was throwing 4-inch paddle tail. We've got a paddle tail here at Salt Strong that we came up with a color for. It's called the Slam Shady. I don't know if you've seen it. Yeah, it's just great. And I used it in North Carolina in dirty, murky water, and the natural color of that white flash is just it's good in clear water, dirty water. I'm not going to get into a whole sales pitch of it, but it's just one of those baits that I trust. And with these owner twist locks, if you mess with that weight, you can actually move it up and down the hook. And what I basically did when I was fishing that day, knowing that we were still coming off of a cold front, but those fish were wanting to feed, I was in kind of a transition zone coming out of a depth change. And this is when I'm going after big fish, this is the game plan here. I'm fishing in between fronts, knowing when fish are going to want to start stacking up on food just because they haven't been eating during the front. Large fish like that typically are going to feed super heavily, at least in my observations, right before a front hits. And you have to wait a couple days after to really get on a good bite, because they're not going to immediately come out of it. They don't get a ton of energy. But it was the right day, right conditions, first conditions to line up for them to start feeding again after this front, and again right before the front as well that was about to come through with the freeze. And basically was just trying to hang these paddle tails over big potholes and transition zones, going from really deep channels up to prime hunting flats with tons of potholes, tons of bait and everything. Just really good shallow structure. And the key was moving this weight a little bit further back on the hook. So when the paddle tail was going over that pothole, it just hung in the column and it dropped a lot slower.
Yes.
I've been finding that the sink rate on my lures 100% has a huge effect on how many strikes I'm going to get, and the quality of fish that are going to hit it too. It's like what level of energy is that large trout willing to expend? And the longer you can hang a bait in front of its face, the better. And you talk about
the more tempting it's going to be. Yes.
Yeah. You talk about the soft iron XLs and again, the Corkies are a great example of this. For me, those are great baits when you know where the fish are. For me, with my job, I'm always fishing areas. For those of you who are insiders that do see my on the water reports, I'm not fishing the same spots every single time I go out. I go and I try a new zone almost every single week. So I like the paddle tails because I can cover a lot of ground really quickly. I'm not saying that they're the best bait in the world, and there's others that will perform them in specific scenarios. Obviously, if you put a twitch bait next to a paddle tail where where the fish are, the twitch bait's probably going to catch more fish. Problem is, I don't necessarily know where the fish are all the time. So
it's a better search bait for sure. You're going to cover more water with that soft plastic, and then once you kind of locate the fish, you can kind of change it up and kind of see what works for you once you find them. And that's the cool thing about having a search bait and finding the fish, and then you can play around with different presentations and build your confidence because you found the fish now. And then now you can go after, oh man, I'm gonna throw this corky and try to get more comfortable throwing this corky. Because there's a lot of people out there that that are just like, man, I just can't figure it out. And there's really no wrong way to work it. I mean, you can reel it on slack line and just kind of bounce along, or you can fast twitch it in the upper water column, or I fish it in around deep reef and count it down. I know what the sink rate is. I count it down and twitch and just let it sink and twitch. Boink. I mean, you get when you get hit on those, man. That's why they don't call it the corky thump for nothing. It's pretty dang heart racing when that doink and it just about misses out your hand, not slacking your line. It's all good.
Oh yeah, I'm falling in love with it. I used a lot of mirror lures in the Carolinas, the hard plastics, and I know that's kind of the regional bait around here is that corky. And man, like once I found them with the paddle tails, I've been whipping my bait caster out, throwing that corky. Oh, it is so fun, and it's so effective too. It's crazy how once you figure out what that sink rate is, where that bait needs to be sitting, it's basically just working it like a top. I mean,
yeah, basically walking the dog underwater in that column you find it in. Yep.
I got to give credit to Caleb McCumber. He had a great tutorial on that, because I was looking at that bait and I was like, how do I work this thing? And I just looked it up on YouTube. And like I said earlier, I mean, I've done this since I was a kid. Any question you have about fishing, very likely
look it up on YouTube.
Yeah. So Caleb taught me how to do that, and man, it's been working so well for me. Just figuring out what depth they're at, working it at that depth, and obviously once I know where they are, and it's almost like every cast, man, with that corky, it's super super effective.
Yeah. They smoke that thing, man. It's so exciting to be able to just get in them like that, man. Oh yeah, Caleb does some good work, Captain Caleb. Yeah, he's a good dude. Put some great content out himself.
Oh yeah.
No, I hadn't got a chance to get on the water with him, but hopefully one of these days I get to go and fish with him up there his way. Yeah, man. Good stuff, man. Anything else planned? You got any other travels? Have you fished anywhere out of the States?
Yeah, so I actually got to fish in the Cayman Islands. After I graduated from high school, I got to go out and do a lot of fishing there. It was fishing off the docks for, believe it or not, barracuda. Like the barracuda run really shallow there, almost like snook do down in Florida. And I've done a ton of fishing in Florida. I used to live in Tampa. So that's another area that I'm familiar with. But in terms of outside the country, I've caught a lot of tarpon off those docks in the Cayman. I mean, they're super thick there, and it's almost like cheating. I ran offshore a couple times while I was there, but really, really fun. A different type of fishery to experience. In terms of like inshore anywhere else, I've not. There's a lot of adventures I want to go on in South America for like barramundi and stuff like that. Oh man, it's and the big snook they've got down there too. We actually partnered with a company in South America to make these shrimp lures, these power prawns, because that's all they use down there is those big shrimp. And I mean, you should go look up for anybody watching. You should go look up some of the snook they're catching in South America, because it's like it makes our records here in the States like look silly. And for anybody that likes snook fishing, just do yourself a favor and look up some of those catches. It's crazy.
Yeah, Costa Rica too.
Oh yeah,
Costa Rica, Nicaragua. There's some giants down there on the Pacific side. You know, that's one thing I'd love to do is kayak fish down there, Nicaragua. I have a buddy that owns a surf camp down there, and they do quite a bit of fishing off of Ponga. And I was like, man, it'd be awesome if they could do like some kayak stuff too, kind of similar to what Los Buzos does in Panama, you know, because that's some good stuff down there. They got great fisheries down there also. Anything else though? You got, you know, any other travels? You got anything planned coming up or?
Yeah.
How long were you in Texas? How much longer are you over here for?
Yeah. So I'm here, you know, I'd obviously like to cover new regions for Salt Strong. We don't have a time for me of leaving. Maybe when I feel like I've covered the Texas coast, like I covered the Carolinas pretty well. I had reports stretching from top of the Roanoke River all the way down to even Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I need to do more in the Carolinas still, I know, but I feel like I'm going to be here until I cover Texas in its entirety. And there's a lot to do here, so that might be a while. In terms of what I want to do next, I know that we're about to get into some amazing summer fishing here. I want to start looking really hard after redfish. I've been focused almost solely on trout. Unfortunately, with this freeze, it's seeming like I might be having to do an early transition here. Really excited to see some of the surf and jetty fishing that happens around me. I love surf fishing. I love shore-based fishing. Not in waders. It's just something really cool about standing on, you know, the hard ground, just like it was when I was a kid. Just it's super, super simple stuff, but there's something really cool about just not having the extra gear and still getting the quality fish. So I'm excited to get into all the amazing things that summer brings, and the flounder run as well, man. I fell in love with flounder in the Carolinas, and I know that you guys get them real good here as well. I've caught a couple. In fact, caught one on a corky, which I did not expect to do. But yeah, I'm excited for the flounder run here as well. So there's a lot for me to look forward to. A lot of places for me to look forward to travel to. I go up and down the coast, so I'll be going as far north as I can, and probably back down to South Padre again to do some fishing as well.
So it seems to me like you'll be here through the fall at least, and then we definitely make some awesome redfish sight casting trips happen when they start schooling up here later August, September, around our marsh systems over here. We get really good stuff, and then you got some stuff near you, especially you talk about jetty fishing. You got one of the premier jetty fishing spots right there, Port Aransas jetties. It's very easy to catch, kingfish slinging spoons off of those rocks, or hook into a tarpon or two here and there. It's not unheard of. And, that's cool that, the people that might not have a boat or might not have a kayak or something, they can get out there and experience that too. So that'll be cool to see some of your outlooks on that and do some segments on that and some tips and stuff for them too. Yeah. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, super excited.
Right on, dude. Well, man, I appreciate you coming on with me tonight and getting a little more background on you and letting everybody know a little bit about Salt Strong and about you yourself. And, we're going to hopefully get the fish together sometime soon, man. You're only about an hour from me, so we're going to have to meet up and hit the water and team up and check it out. And then, you got anything else you want to add, some shout outs or anything like that? Go ahead, man.
Yeah. And first off, I'm super looking forward to hitting the water with you. I've followed the show for a little while, and there's a lot of great stuff that's been shared, and it's helped me a lot. So I got to give a shout out to you as well. I did a lot of research before I moved here. I was looking at the Bite Me podcast. I was looking at yours as well. And it's just, there's such a wealth of information here with all the great anglers that are choosing to put out content. And I just wanted to thank everybody that's, there's a good chance if you made a fishing video, I've watched it trying to get ready to learn how to fish here in Texas. So pretty much everybody, any content creator here, any angler that's put up stuff on social media, I'm learning from you guys. So I want to give a shout out to all the anglers in Texas, basically.
Right on, man.
But yeah, I'm just real happy to be here.
Yeah, man. We're stoked to have you over here, dude. Everybody go check out Wyatt on social media. What you got, what's your tags and all that. I got it scrolling across the bottom. You got Salt Strong Wyatt on Instagram. And
yep.
What's the YouTube they can find you under, YouTube channel?
Yeah, so I don't have my own YouTube channel. You can just go to Salt Strong. If you type in Salt Strong on YouTube, that's where you guys are going to be able to find all the fishing videos, all the content that we put out. And obviously go check us out at saltstrong.com, where we put up a ton of stuff. There's some stuff that doesn't get put up on YouTube on there. And you can check out all the other stuff on there. But yeah, that's mainly where I spend most of my time. I do make a couple posts on my personal Instagram here and there. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to making more videos for you guys through the Salt Strong channel.
So Salt Strong is also on Instagram?
Yes, Salt Strong is on Instagram as well.
Salt Strong and the Facebook page and group. So y'all go give them likes and follows and see what all they got going on. Get in on the insider action, and you'll see some reports from Wyatt and all over the rest of the country. I mean, they're covering all the water all over. So that's a cool deal, man. Y'all got something going on really well. Like the platform, and everybody go check them out. So once again, thanks again for coming on, Wyatt. This is Dustin with Chasing the Tide. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Thanks to the show, the segment sponsors, Waterloo Rods and Truchador & Co. And appreciate everybody tuning in. We'll see y'all on the next one.
See you guys.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode on Paddle and Fin. Don't forget to go check out our website at paddle_n_fin.com. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel at Paddle and Fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest on a future episode, feel free to email us at paddle_n_fin@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paddle and Fin on Facebook and Instagram. Shout out to our show supporters, Angler. The Angler button and app just makes for a better time on the water and creates a virtual logbook for every fishing outing out on the water. Shout out to Rocktown Adventures, located in Northern Illinois, for all your kayaking, camping, and hiking needs. Shout out to Jig Masters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com.